Hello and welcome to yet another video, and in this video I'll be talking about this lens right here. It's the Canon RF 16mm f2.8. Now this lens is a very small lens, but it packs a ton of quality to it, and in this video I'll be sharing you my thoughts, the pros and the cons, why I actually recommend this lens, and why in some cases I might not. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the video. So the Canon RF 16mm f2.8, yes, that's actually a protective sticker that you see around the lens. It's not an illusion and it's not dirt, it's actually just a protective sticker. Now this lens is actually quite nicely built. It has really good plastic to it and it has a nice metal mount. That being said, it's a type of material that scratches quite easily. Even though it's kind of scratches, you can actually rub it off with your finger, but it's kind of annoying. So I actually just got the protective sticker around it. And that's what I actually kind of noticed with the later RF, well, pretty much most of the RF lenses that I've tried, including this 28-70 that I have as my main lens right here. That's also why I put the protective sticker on it as well, because I'm not a fan of protective stickers, but in this case, I actually got really annoyed about how easily it gets scratched. And it's not, as I said, it's not a type of scratch where it's a permanent one. You can just rub it off with your finger, but it still gets really annoying at a certain point. And you might actually feel the same when buying this, because yeah, if you put it in your bag, it can actually get scratched. If you kind of have it swing around your waist or something, or hang around your neck, it will actually find scratches on there anyway. Though again, it's a type of scratches where you can just rub it off with your fingers or your cloth, things like that. But it just got really annoying, and to some of you, you might actually want to actually get a protective skin for it. That being said, it doesn't really affect the image quality on the lens itself, and in this video I'll be talking about the operational side of things, the ergonomics, things like that on this lens, as well as the image quality, and then my conclusion. So let's start with the ergonomics and the operational side of things. So this lens is actually quite nicely built. It's not too tacky, it's not plasticky at all, to be honest. It has metal mount, it's very light. To be honest, I've been using it as more of like a body cap, because when I'm back here in Amsterdam, I don't really find a lot of scenes that I personally would photograph with this lens. If you already have something like the 15-35 or the 16-35 millimeter, or even the 14-35 millimeter lens RF, it actually becomes quite a redundant focal length. Though I get the appeal of having a small size of it and everything, and I will talk about it later in the video. But just here in Amsterdam, I don't really find a lot of advantage of this lens over the others. That said, originally when I bought this lens, I actually wanted it to be kind of like my discrete lens, or a lens that wouldn't really be too much in someone's face when I'm doing street photography, and a type of lens that just, wouldn't really intrude into any other people's space, because I was actually traveling in Thailand, and I will actually be going there quite a few more times to come. And yeah, I would just love to walk at the night market, and I would just love to walk at the kind of like fresh market and any crowded places, and just want to snap some moments here and there, and also just capture how the daily life there is like, things like that. And this lens actually allows me to do that. And yeah, that was actually the main purpose why I got it. But if you're actually photographing landscape, things like that, then it might be definitely much better to go for something like the 16-35, the EF version, or the RF 15-35, 14-35, what have you, simply because the quality on those will just be kind of just a hair better, but you get more flexibility. But with this one, again, if you're kind of more into street photography, the size, the discreteness of it is actually perfect. And if you're also kind of into cityscape photography, the size of it actually can be beneficial, because what I noticed between this lens, using this lens for street photography, or even photographing simple street buildings, things like that, normal architecture, just snapshots, is that people don't really look at me. And if I just bring my 16-35, there will just be people, like even that 16-35 lens, it's actually a small lens, but there will be some people who just want to take a sneak peek behind the camera LCD, as if I'm actually not trying to frame the composition or anything. So it's kind of weird. But yeah, this lens is just a very discreet lens, no one cares, and you can just, after taking the shot, you can just get on with your day again. So yeah, that's a really nice thing. What I really don't like is how the focus control shares the control with the actual function control. So usually on the full-size RF lenses, you have the manual control as well as the function control. But because on here it's such a small lens, they can only share the actual function and the control. So natively, by switching back, it will actually be whatever you set as custom to the actual function ring, and that's quite annoying. They just fixed that on the R7 and on the R10, where there's an additional manual focus kind of lever down here, and I wish that the R5 and the R6 has it, but they don't. So yeah, you just stuck with going to the menu and change the settings or the functions, vice versa. And yeah, that being said, with the more modern Canon autofocusing system, I find myself rarely actually having to go into manual focus, so that's also quite useful, I guess. That being said, I don't use my function or actually set any of the functions onto the ring itself. So to me, the function ring can be it has become kind of useless. So just to keep that in mind if you actually like to set the functions on the lens or not. Simply because, you know, on this camera you already have like 3 dials, one here, and one here. So you already have your shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. Another nice point about this lens is the actual filter thread here. Because the filter thread is only 43mm, it's actually very, very small, and it's easy to find this kind of filter size, and also for a low price. I don't recommend buying filters, like cheaper filters, but if you want to buy filters, if you're that kind of people, I would recommend something like B+W. I'm not sponsored, but it's just a really nice brand, because usually when you go for cheaper filters, it takes away a lot of contrast as well as introduces flaring, and also it's just kind of like taking away the quality of the coating that the manufacturer already kind of coated on here. Whereas if you get something like a B+W or even higher, they tend to actually improve or actually keep the quality of the coating, so that it doesn't really affect the image that much. And if it rains, especially this model is the MRC Nano model, it actually kind of like reduces the raindrops if there's raindrops on there, and it just allows a much easier time to actually photograph. I have filters on here. Usually I'm not a filter person, but I've been traveling to so many places where it's been kind of unforgiving environment lately that I feel safer with the filter on. And again, if you're going to put filters on, always go for the high quality one. Unless of course if you're just shooting with a kit lens, then you might not need the highest quality filter, but invest in some decent filters will actually pay off at the end of the day. So yeah, and now to the image quality. Surprisingly, I actually don't have a lot of things to say about the image quality on this lens, apart from the fact that it's actually very good. It's very sharp from corner to corner. I can even use it at f2.8 and it will be okay. Yes, if you turn off the auto correction, it actually goes wider than 16mm, but you see like hard vignetting edges. But that's something like some people really love that look for some reason, and I can kind of see why. But on my side, I kind of like the corrected version turned on, and it will just give you back to 16mm and it will be very stretched. That said, from corner to corner, it would actually still be very sharp. If you're going to shoot portrait with this lens, I would say you can get the job done, but you're not going to get a lot of nice blurry background, and I actually haven't really used it for serious portrait by any means. Can you do it? Yes, I think you can. It's just not really my type. I really just like it as a snap kind of lens where I don't really take things seriously and just snap, 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 document, document, document. And it's also kind of like that discrete lens where I can just take around. If I just want to go out to see friends or go out to do some groceries, things like that, it's kind of like a camera and a lens combo to really just take along with me. It's a small camera. It's also like a really tiny lens. I can just do a lot of things with it, and also it focuses quite closely, which means it's very versatile, it's very flexible, and 16mm, it's kind of like a nice focal length for me anyway. So yeah, it's a very fun lens to use. Another point is the contrast as well as the chromatic aberration. The chromatic aberration, which is like the color fringing and pretty much the green or purple, magenta, kind of bluish, depending on the lens, lines you see around very bright contrast edges. It's very well controlled on this lens. Will it become visible at some point? Yes, you can actually take some pictures where there will be color fringing, but to be honest, it's very, very minor, and if you live here in Northern Europe where the light isn't really that strong, you don't really have to worry about it either. And it's just a very practical lens. If it shows up, which means you either are traveling like tropical countries or you're actually really trying hard to get color fringing, then you can still clean up very nicely. It's just very, very minor, and you're not really going to take it super seriously simply because it's just super easy to just fix those color fringing. And the next point is actually the sharpness. Now, I usually use this lens at around f2.8, f8, f9, f11, and f14. Those are just pretty much my sweet spots for every single lens that I use, apart from, let's say, the 85 1.2, the 50 1.2, so on and so forth. But this lens is actually pretty nice. Obviously, if you stop it down to like f4, f5, it's going to be sharper than f2.8, but just by a hair. You don't really notice it that much in real life. If you pixel peep, then yes, you will notice, but you know, like, you can easily just go and shoot f2.8 throughout the day, and obviously depending on your composition, depending on the subject that you've actually tried to focus, it will actually work quite nicely. I don't even have a lot of complaints with the corner sharpness, simply because even with the corner sharpness of this lens, it's actually quite sharp, and I quite like this lens on how versatile it is. So yeah, overall this lens is actually a very versatile lens, and to be honest, the color rendition, the kind of the color you get out of this lens is just really, really nice, and I don't really have a lot of complaints with it. And now into the conclusion. Yes, this video is actually quite short compared to my other videos, but yeah, I don't really have a lot of bad things to say. It's just mainly good things. If you're really looking for a versatile lens, not only in terms of like the weight, the size, but also like the image quality, then you know, you can't really go wrong with this lens. I would really highly recommend this lens as long as you know that you want this focal length, or if you just really want to experiment with this focal length. It's not an expensive way to get into 16mm full frame. It's actually focuses quite nicely. In video, it's gonna, like, if you use external microphone, you will not hear the autofocusing noise, but if you use the internal microphone and if the place is like super quiet like a library, then you might be able to hear the actual focusing motor. But otherwise, that's about it really. It doesn't really hunt a lot, both in photography and in video. It's actually focuses quite smoothly and quickly, and extra buttery smooth in video mode. So yeah, there's that. But otherwise, yeah, I would actually recommend this lens. Again, only if you know that 16mm is something you want to get into and it's your focal length, and or if you want to experiment into a 16mm. Now, you can shoot a lot of things, whether it's street photography, portraits, event, what have you. The only downside, again, is just you really have to know that it's your focal length, just like 24mm. Most people don't really like 24mm because it's not really practical for them. But for example, it's my favorite focal length for all-around shoots for me personally. I love 24 1.4. I would even say that 24mm is actually much more versatile, as well as much more useful for me than a 50mm f1.2. But you know, there are two different kinds of lenses, but it's just in the photography community, most people praise 50mm, and I'm in a 24mm kind of camp. But I'm only bringing that argument up because it's kind of going to be the same or similar argument for some of you watching, that, you know, 16mm might not always be such a focal length for you. So if you're going to have it on the lens, if you're going to have the lens mounted on the camera the whole time, then you really have to kind of commit to that yeah, you can't really zoom, because to a lot of people, in a lot of cases, it can be too wide of a lens. But yeah, that's that. Otherwise, if you're used to it, it actually focuses quite closely. It's very versatile. The features, the functions, the quality, everything is just very nice. And you can actually put this camera in many places that, you know, you wouldn't be able to really put this lens setup into. So it's really a nice and discreet lens, and it doesn't really intrude into other people's personal space. So I really highly recommend, especially if you're like landscape, cityscapes, street photographer, event photographer, things like that, people photography. So yeah, that's about it really. It's not weather sealed, so don't try to put it in the rainy places or super wet places. I have taken this lens through so many I've taken this lens through lit rain so many times, so there's that. But that's just really on me, and really haven't really acted on me yet. But then again, sometimes I just wipe it off really quickly, but your mileage might vary, and I don't really recommend you guys putting into the rain. So yeah. but it also is kind of a testament to the fact that, you know, this thing is kind of built at least decently. So yeah, I would just like to leave it at that. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me at any time. Just leave it down in the comment section down below. And if you need a free photography guidebook, it's absolutely for free. The link's down in the description section below. It's on my website, just click and download. No need to submit your email address, nothing, just yeah, click and download. Otherwise, yeah, thank you very much for watching. Stay safe. Have fun shooting. Till next time, bye for now.